surprised. I just saw this video of this guy who literally spends no money because he works for some like they do like kitchen equipment, and he gets a lot of kitchen equipment for free, and sometimes it comes in boxes, and he literally made a bed out of the peanuts that they packed like the pot in, and he took the peanuts out and he filled it into like this wooden thing, and he put a tablecloth on top of it, and he called it his bed. I'm like, what kind of life is this? Like you're trying to save as much as possible, but also like you're literally sleeping on plastic. It's like I don't know. In my opinion, I'm like, there's a balance to all things, right? If we're too far towards savings, then we get into trouble. If we're too far towards spending, then obviously we're going to get into trouble, right? Somewhere in the middle where we're saving appropriately, we're making sure we can provide for ourselves, but we're also providing for today, which I think in general is also important, right? You do need to feed yourself. God didn't put us on earth to, sleep on peanut packings and not eat real food, right? We're here to like change the world and make the world a better place, but also like to live and to live comfortably, like to the best of our ability. So I think that in all things, it's really a balance. And sometimes it's hard because in the Bitcoin world, especially, right, we tend to be on an extreme in general. And I think that that's how people end up becoming Bitcoiners, is because they are on these extremes and can gravitate like this new kind of life-changing money, especially as early as it is, but also because we tend to be on that extreme, we tend to do other things in extremes, and sometimes we need a little bit of help moderating our behavior.
Yeah, and this is something I think a lot about that, because I think saving is probably not like depends on what your goal is and what your outlook is, but I actually try to have the life I want to live already, and then see like, okay, how can I get more without sacrificing things? So like, what I mean with that is, when I started the whole podcast, I was ready to spend off my stack, and I was like, okay, I'll go on this journey now, because I did not know if I make money with that at all. It was like just like, okay, let's go on this journey. Luckily enough, I had every month a little bit extra income, so I never had to spend down on my stack, which I was prepared to do for about a year. And since then, I just grew the business and grew everything. But instead of just keeping it, I always reinvested. So I started with like just me, just barely, just barely scraping by, and now we are a 4-person team that works on the podcast and the companies alike. And I still make personally the same thing that I made in the starting when the podcast was barely there, just because I take the thing that I need to save a few more extra sats for my personal thing and reinvest the whole thing. So I figured out right now, like, okay, this is how much I need, and everything else I can reinvest, and maybe it gets bigger, maybe everything explodes, I don't care, but I make enough to live, and everything else I can reinvest in the community and potentially in bigger income down the line. But yeah, I don't need more money right now.
It's a good way of approaching it. Yeah, it's amazing. Your business has grown a lot.
I don't know. It's just, yeah. I have an interesting one, because you probably get a lot of questions that you, as with the price and the cycles, that you're like, oh, like I don't even care about answering them too much. What are some of the questions that you don't get often, but you would wish to get more often?
Yeah, I love that question. So I think it's really going to depend on the stage that a Bitcoiner is at. But like in my planning practice, like we were starting to have Bitcoiners who have been involved for a long time and where they have very sizable Bitcoin stacks, and then thinking about how we're going to be approaching it so that maybe they don't have to be working crazy hours anymore. Maybe they could scale back and actually start using some of this Bitcoin in a way that is, I guess, palatable to a Bitcoiner, right? It's hard for Bitcoiners to sell their Bitcoin. And so like some of that involves some trust planning, which I've found to be really interesting, where we're helping clients basically either gift to the next generation already, to their children, but also be able to take a stream of income from it. There are trusts that allow you to do that. Or similarly, we're creating like charitable trusts where they know they're going to be charitable anyways. And so there are different types of charitable trusts where like you can either leave the remainder to charity or give a stream of income to charity, and then like the remainder stays with the family. And so using these like traditional finance vehicles to actually help people now who are in these complicated financial planning situations. We brought that a lot, especially this year, given how much the price has increased over the past year, that like now some of these planning tactics are actually really interesting for people. The other thing is, I guess, balancing the needs of today. Maybe you're not necessarily in trust planning situation, but maybe it still makes sense to start looking at some of the income generating assets that are out there, as opposed to only stacking in Bitcoin, right? And so for some people right now, it might make sense to hold other assets and so forth to get a stream of income on it while they're still preserving the majority of their assets in Bitcoin. And then viewing that on a case by case basis of like how much income is needed, what are we trying to replace, how can we do it, and then thinking about it in terms of, you know, not costing too much in taxes, trying to be really kind of mindful about smoothing out any kind of tax burden that can result, as opposed to like selling Bitcoin or adding to something else and so forth. So there's a lot of different like interesting planning things I think that have come up as a result of just the Bitcoin price going up in general. So I like working on that stuff. Obviously, I find that really, really interesting. And then the basics. I think always going back to the basics is really important. I do often feel like I repeat my and that I'm like a broken record, that, you know, you have to have net savings. But people need to be reminded of that. Even Bitcoiners, I feel like, you know, like what I see in the Bitcoin world a lot of the time is that we're not saving as much, maybe. Sometimes people are over saving, and I'm not really talking about these people, right? And there's plenty of people all over, I think, the Twitter space or the X universe, where, you know, they're influencers of some sort, and they are over savers, and they're very proud of it, and they want people to know about it, and that's great. The average person, though, sometimes thinks of it as like, okay, Bitcoin's going to grow quite a lot, so I don't necessarily have to save as much, right? You can think about it from the opposite standpoint. And I would say that, like, and people call me bearish for saying this, but I think that you shouldn't rely on that. Like, I think that you should still use tried and true financial planning principles where you're still saving 20% of your pre-tax income as much as you can, right? Like, there might be some years where you can't do that and so forth, which is why you should still be focusing on doing it in the years that you can, or even saving a little bit more, so that when something comes, like a big year comes up, that you can handle it. And also, like, making sure you have an emergency reserve. Bitcoiners hate this. It's like their least favorite thing. It's like they're allergic to holding a fiat reserve. But the reality is that the fiat reserve saves people time and time again when unexpected things come up. And so, like, maybe if you've got a huge Bitcoin stack and it's not a big deal and you don't care to just sell a little bit when an emergency comes up, then fine. But for the average person who really is trying to diligently stack and so forth, and is saving 20% of their pre-tax income or whatever it is, the emergency reserve is going to save them. Like, if their car breaks down, or if they've got a hot water heater leak in their home, or like all of a sudden, their job situation changes and they realize they actually do want to, like, maybe the next best step is to start a business, right? It doesn't always have to be a bad thing that happens in your life that makes you use your emergency reserve and so forth. And so I think it's really important to consider that. And your emergency reserve can be based on your risk tolerance. You don't have to have a years long emergency reserve, right? You can just have, 3 months worth of expenses just to make sure you can get through any sort of situation that comes up.
James Jack brought that up to me. I think he does it like that. He said he has gold actually as his cash, which is an interesting strategy, because like gold is not as likely to fall as sharply as Bitcoin does at this point. It's still volatile, and you still have a like hard asset. How do you look at like emergency funds that are not cash but like a lot more short-term volatility exposed, and not as short-term volatility exposed as Bitcoin is?
I don't consider it an emergency reserve. So I would not use that as an emergency reserve. Again, if he wants to take extra risk and call that an emergency reserve, then fine. But I don't think that the average person should be considering something like that an emergency reserve. Emergency reserve is literally something where you have access to it very, very quickly. So for most people, that's just going to be, even like if you want to keep it on the smallest side, that you have one in like a savings account that you can easily access, where if you need to make a bill pay that day, you can, right? For maybe if you want to extend that further, now we have like these preferred products out there where, and this is not investment advice by any stretch, and I'm not telling people to do this because I don't know their situation. I don't want people to be making investments, but you could consider this if you already have that 1 month that, okay, I have another, let's say 2 months and something, some of these prefers that are yielding more. And that way, if I do need to sell it, I can sell it and transfer it, right? And be able to move it into my account within 3 days. Right. And so there are other options out there right now besides, let's say, just holding Bitcoin or holding gold or something that's a lot more volatile, in my opinion, to make these things work. For most of my clients, though, we just use a high yield savings account. and it works just fine. And then they allocate the rest of their assets aggressively, or however they want to do it. And we help with that, obviously. But I think that like people need to get it out of their head that they're trying to get ahead with their emergency reserve. That's not what it's there for, right? The emergency reserve is there for like, I don't know, you slip and you break your hip, right? And you're out of work for 3 months. I mean, it's like, who couldn't possibly foresee that? But like all of a sudden now you're selling your Bitcoin stack. And what if Bitcoin's down 50% when you're doing that? Now all of a sudden you have less Bitcoin, or same thing with gold, right? Or you can't get the money when you need it because for whatever reason, like, you know, you can't access your hardware wallet because you've slipped and broken your hip and it's hard to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm putting scenarios out there that are maybe far-fetched, but I've seen these things happen where people lose their job or they break a bone or their kids need something or whatever it is, right? Some sort of emergency comes up and people are very grateful when they have that cash there. And in the meantime, yeah, it is annoying to look at reserve and be like, why do I have that? I don't really need that. But the reality is that you should, like, the best case scenario is that you kept a little extra cash around and nothing bad happened to you. And yeah, fine, you didn't get, you know, double digit returns on your emergency reserve. But if something were to happen to you, I guarantee you'll be glad that it was there.
Yeah, it's this hard thing where Bitcoiners look at that stack and it's like, oh, this stack could be 0. Like whatever Bitcoin. And you're like, oh, that could be, if Bitcoin goes to 2 million, that is then, oh, this much. So I think Bitcoiners make that calculation sometimes too much. And people bring this pizza example because it's so extreme, always up of like, oh, like, see, he spent 10,000 Bitcoin on 2 pizzas. Yeah, but if he adopted a Bitcoin standard or was kind of conservatively, aggressively on Bitcoin and just converted like 20 or 30% of his portfolio to Bitcoin, he probably has like hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins right now, maybe even like in the million. Probably not, but like it is possible if you spend 10,000 Bitcoin on 2 pizzas. So they only look at that one expenditure and not like, okay, what does it mean if he spends 10,000 Bitcoin on 2 pizzas? It probably means that he has hundreds of thousands of them if he's if he believes in Bitcoin and is convinced in Bitcoin and he doesn't lose it, all those things that usually happen to people that are early into Bitcoin. And the same
We're
way
making that decision though with every expenditure, right? If like when you just go and buy pizza with fiat, what you're saying is I'm not going to put this $20 into Bitcoin right now. I'm going to go eat these pizzas. So anyone who did that in 2011 when he, you know, set the end for those pizzas has basically done the same thing and they didn't know it.
100%, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I'm sometimes very annoyed at those people that say, oh, you don't sell your Bitcoin, you end up like the pizza guy, and I'm like, the pizza guy does just fine. Like I believe he has a lot of Bitcoin and he's doing very good right now because he seemed to have understood it. And so will you in 10 years if you have most of your money in Bitcoin, get a few sats more each month and just spend the Bitcoin that you have here and there if you actually need it. So I'm getting frustrated with that question because I'm a big proponent of spending a Bitcoin, using it as money. It's not just there to like hold on to it and die with a bunch of Bitcoin. So you actually should enjoy it. Bitcoin is there to get more life into get more life into your life and not more life into Bitcoin or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you believe in God, but I do believe in God and I do incorporate that into my everyday life. And I believe that God provides, right? And so at the end of the day, God is going to provide for me. God is going to provide for my children. God is providing for me right now, right? My children are reliant on me and therefore God is also providing for my children, but God will also in the future, right? If I believe that God is benevolent and loving of all of his children, then of course he's going to provide for my children, right? Of course, he's going to put us in the situation that we need to be in that will bring us closer to him, but also make our life meaningful and also help us grow as people, right? And so that's like, I feel like we have to make decisions, right? And we have to make our own efforts and so forth. But at the end of the day, right, the source of all of this is from above. And so people can deny that by, you know, saying that we trust in Bitcoin or whatever it is, right? And they can put their trust somewhere else if you're not going to, you know, believe in the creator and so forth. But the reality is that like we will all be provided for, right? And that our level of effort is like all that we can do, and what remains at the end of the day is really up to God. So even if, right, and Bitcoiners hate when I say this. So maybe I'll get some hate mail from this. Even if you are a super saver, literally a super saver, doing everything, living on packing peanuts, whatever it is, right? Even if you're doing that and not spending any of your Bitcoin, right? At the end of the day, if you there could be some sort of extraordinary event that God puts into your life that you lose half your stack or whatever it is, right? Like these things happen to people, where there's that guy who's been searching in the dumpster for the last 10 years for his keys. I feel like it's one of those things where if God does not want you to have the money, you will not have the money. So that doesn't mean necessarily that you shouldn't do all of these efforts, right? At the end of the day, that's why we're here. We're here to make the efforts and to do the right thing and to do the best that we can with the information that we have. And also we have to balance that with what our everyday what we need in our everyday lives, and at the end of the day that the outcome is actually not up to us. And I think if anything, when people think that, right, sometimes they think, okay, I have more anxiety, but the reality is actually that I think that is less anxiety provoking to know that somebody out there, our creator is out there caring for us, and putting what we need in front of us. And I think it makes everything a lot easier, in my opinion.
Yeah, I heard this great quote. God will give you challenges, and He will only give you challenges that that you will conquer, but also challenges that challenge you. So, something like that. I probably dosed it off a lot, but something like along those lines. And this makes, even if you just have that in mind, I saw it makes things easier. You're like, oh yeah, I can do that. Even if you don't believe in it, if you just get in this challenges only come your way if you can actually handle them. Otherwise the challenge wouldn't come to you. Then it's oh yeah, I can do that. And it made things easier for me. Even though I'm not super religious, I get more religious with the podcast because all my guests are very religious. Not all of them, but I would say a super majority of them are. And I learn a lot from that. There's some interesting connection between Bitcoin and religion. Maybe between Bitcoiners and religion, especially Christianity, but many other religions also.
Yeah, so I mean, I think honestly, so I'm Jewish, and so there's some differences for sure, but there's some main differences. Obviously, there's the main difference that we disagree on about who's Messiah, and then there's other things where there's sort of more nuanced things that are different. The Jewish perspective on life is that we are here to accomplish things, and that we are here actually to elevate the material world. And so I think what happens with Bitcoin actually is a lot of the consumerism and the materialism starts to melt away. And in Judaism, that then gives us an opportunity to elevate what's important, spiritually important in the world, in my opinion. I think from the Christian perspective, it's similar, it's just a little nuanced. And please, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But what I've heard is basically that we're stripping away the material world, and that brings you closer to God. It's not actually about elevating what's in the material world. It's just that once you're stripping away all of that materialism and consumerism and so forth, that now it just gives you more closeness. And that you're more removed from the world, from this world. You're more in the spiritual world. And so I guess you could sort of see how it's slightly different, right? That in Judaism, we're here to elevate what's actually here. And that can be something so simple as you order something on Amazon, maybe, right? I don't know, you order some random food on Amazon, and then we make a blessing before we eat it, and now we've elevated the food, right? I'm just giving a silly example, but we are still on this earth, right? And so you can keep removing all of these layers and so forth. And yes, I do think that will bring you closer to God. But at the end of the day, we still have to be in this material world. So I don't think that Bitcoin in and of itself removes us from the material world. I think it gives us an opportunity to interact in the material world in an elevated way.
That's super interesting. Religion is a big blind spot for me, so I couldn't even tell you any differences between any religions. But it's super interesting to hear, especially those connections in this material world. I have one more question before we get to the end of the podcast. Is probably one of the most watched videos when we talk about that, is the whole thing on retiring on Bitcoin. It's super funny. If this is in the title, it's just people are drawn towards that. Obviously, as people, they want to maybe retire from the job, or they want to retire someone else, or they just want to see, hey, Bitcoin can take care of me, basically. How do you look at that whole thing with someone approaches you like, oh, hi, here are my assets and I want to retire on Bitcoin, and what are the things to consider with that question also?
Yeah, this is it's definitely it's an all-encompassing question because there's so many different aspects of financial planning related to retirement, and obviously the rules are going to be different in the U.S. versus other places in the world because of just retirement accounts and so forth, and the tax rules and everything. So I'll try to be a little more basic so that it kind of covers everything. But the idea basically is that Bitcoin doesn't create income, right? We're just holding a money. And so even if you were just holding the dollar, right? And I think the way to compare it would be that you literally just take dollars and you stuff it in your mattress. And then your dollar is not generating anything, right? You just are going to take dollars out of there and then go spend it. It's the same thing with Bitcoin, right? And so people don't like that, like functionally in their brain. They're like, well, I need my money to generate money. And I'm so used to this fiat world where my money generates money that if I don't put it in a mattress, if I put it here, then all of a sudden I can get a dividend or an interest or whatever it is. So we kind of have that fiat brain in mind, which is fine. I think we live in a fiat world and we're transitioning away from that fiat world, right? But we're still in this fiat world, like we've been talking about. We have to live in reality and so forth. So either we have to flip the script in our mind that says, okay, total return, which is the difference between what I bought Bitcoin with and what it's worth now, is the same as income, right? Like if I have an income generating product and for whatever reason with that income generating product, I was able to get the same return as I was just by holding Bitcoin, then there's no difference between the income generating one and Bitcoin, right? The only difference is that I saw the income move out of the product and into my account and I quote unquote got it in dollars. But the value of the product stayed the same probably. Whereas with Bitcoin, the value quote unquote increased in dollar terms, right? And so because I didn't see that increase actually move out of Bitcoin and into my account, now I'm not considering it yield. And so I think we need to flip the script on total return, but then that also means we have to be okay with selling Bitcoin. And so people, yeah, it's fine. You can work off a total return and you can sell and pay capital gains and so forth. And there might be some advantage even to capital gains than getting income, and in the US at least. So like that's something that people need to look into as far as taxes are concerned. But the other way to approach it would be, okay, now there are all these income generating products out there. I have to evaluate whether or not they make sense given my risk tolerance, time horizon, what I'm trying to accomplish. Do I move out some of my Bitcoin from here, maybe pay capital gains and start getting income? Or do I know that I'm going to be retiring in the future and therefore maybe I just start buying these products so I don't have to generate capital gains so that I can have some income, and then I have like a combination of where I sell some Bitcoin and I have some income from these income generating products. So I think that these are ways of looking at it, and that people need to really be running the numbers on their situation or be working with somebody like me. And this is not me like giving a hard sale or anything here, right? But working with a financial advisor to see how much do I actually need for retirement. Like, and I really mean it in dollar terms of like, okay, what do I need to spend? That doesn't necessarily, it's not the same thing as like how much assets do I need, right? Because like the average financial planner, if they're not, let's say, looking at it in Bitcoin terms, might tell you different numbers versus if you were creating this tailored Bitcoin / preferred portfolio for yourself. So you need to just be mindful about what actually is your spending rate. You need to be mindful that spending is probably going to grow over time, but maybe decrease when you're in, like, there's some research that people stop spending as much money when they're 78, I think, because you just slow down and you do less things. So you can take that into account as well. And running these numbers and then making up a retirement plan. People like rules of thumb, and I happen to think that sometimes rules of thumb just make things worse off. But in general, like, I think that you should be erring on the side of a conservatism and really be trying to spend 2% or less of your stack, depending on your age. And that can increase over time as you age because you have less of a lifespan. And that's one way of looking at it, but also you can start combining some of the things that are out there to make it a little more, bespoke for your situation.
Yeah, I think from the FIRE community, there's this 4% rule. And if your annual expenditure is 4% of your net worth, it makes sense to just like sell that off. But that's also like very hard for me, especially with an asset with Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Because Bitcoin could be at 50K next year, or it could be at 400K next year, which makes those whole calculations way like a lot harder. So maybe with Bitcoin you have to first withdraw 40%, 50% crash, then calculate the 4% rule, and then go from there. And if you have more Bitcoin and it shoots up to $1 million, you're just lucky. You have a better retirement at that point.
Yeah, definitely. What we've also done for clients is that have sold at like designated price targets. Let's say like 5 years worth of cash, so that we know, okay, we can hold all this Bitcoin and we'll be able to survive any 5-year period basically without having to dip into it. Some people like that because it gives them sort of the knowingness of, okay, this is how much fiat I have and I'm going to budget over this period of time, and I know no matter what I won't have to dip into my Bitcoin for this number of years. Other people don't like that though, right? Because you might have a large capital gains tax bill in 1 year from doing that, or they don't like the idea of selling all their Bitcoin up front. And so you have to be mindful about like what is appropriate for your situation and how you're going to approach it. I would say the most conservative thing to do obviously would be that you sell and have some sort of fiat runway for retirement, because unless you're willing to go back to work, you got to live off of something.
That's very true. How do you actually look at the state pensions that are there? I mean, this is also like very different for everyone who's listening there, because most of them are in the US, but they're also from Europe and Canada, and all different. Every different nation has probably different pension rules and pension things. But traditionally, I think mostly they work the same, as you have the state pension that just is collected and you get it when you're out of work. Then there are some more free ones where you have tax benefits, and then there is the ones that you just do privately. How do you look at the state side of things? Because in Austria we have a huge debate now going on how much they should be increased, where because the government has no money, and Austria also has no money printer, and then some other nations, where I see this consensus around young people right now, where they say, yeah, we are still paying in this pension system, but we are very sure we won't ever get anything out of that. Like that's scary. Like people are sure about it. Like my generation is kind of like, hey, yeah, like we won't get a pension like our grandpa is going, and I myself also is like, I just see it as an additional tax at that point, the pension thing that I have to pay, because in Austria there's like a certain percentage in pension that you just have to pay. You cannot get out of it. You can't opt out of it, unfortunately. And this is just like an additional tax to the system, and I plan my own pension.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, especially in Europe, I mean, I'd be shocked if any of the countries are able to deliver on their pensions. And honestly, even here in America, like I know they're going to try to overhaul the system and so forth. Every candidate, I mean, every presidential president has been unsuccessful in doing it. It's very unpopular, obviously, to tell people that, you know, younger people, especially who are paying in, that they're not going to get money. But I, especially young people right now, should just expect that they're not going to get it and save accordingly and be like blissfully surprised when they have extra money later. It's kind of how I like how we're thinking about it for clients, at least. For my older clients, right? For basically clients who are age 60 and up, I think we're kind of assuming at this point that they're going to get it. People in their 50s who I do have, we're considering that maybe they won't have it, but maybe they'll have some sort of portion of it, that by then maybe benefits will be cut. And anybody under age 50, we're not even like, we don't even ask for it anymore, honestly. We used to have it be like one of these standard things. Oh, send your social security statement. And now I'm like, I literally don't even care. Like I'm not gonna like what. So you could go on, log in there, and spend a lot of time on there trying to find the statement, only for me to just basically toss in the garbage because in 20 years from now it's not gonna be relevant. You know what I mean? It's like we're not wasting clients' time basically on it. And looking at it more as a gift later. And it's really a sad reality of what's going on with governments, and really just a sad reality of fiat in general, right? I mean, I think that if we weren't off the gold standard and printing like crazy, then we probably wouldn't have these unfunded pensions. But, you know, here we are.
Yeah, and this is also interesting because even if you get a pension, how much will it cover? Because now this year, I think they will increase it. I only have the Austrian numbers. It's probably similar around Europe. It's probably similar, maybe also in America, where they want to increase it 2% this time. And inflation is almost 100% certain higher, like at least in my books. And even the official inflation rate is in Austria higher than the 2%, which is really fun. Even the official ones is higher than that. And the unofficial ones, like if you want to have any sort of nice life with like restaurants or maybe like a nice car or anything like that, all those things are having a way higher inflation rate than what people are calculating with. So like, I don't know, maybe we get a pension, but it might just pay for one meal a month.
Yeah, for sure. I think though, like for the average person, right? And maybe this is not your audience. Like obviously, most people who are listening to your podcast are Bitcoiners, but I mean, the average person really needs to think more in terms of the future of saving because these obligations are probably not going to be met. And so, like, I would equate it to, let's say you were a worker you worked on steel beams all day, right? Like, if you don't pack your peanut butter and jelly sandwich or whatever it is that you want to eat for lunch, right? And you're up there on those steel beams, you're not going to eat lunch, right? That's the reality. So like in the morning, you have to think, okay, not only do I need to make myself breakfast, but I also need to make myself lunch, and I need to pack it in a way where I can get it up on these steel beams so that when I have to eat in the middle of the day and I don't have access to anything else, I have access to food, right? And we need to be like, I know it's a lot harder for people to be thinking about this when they're young, but the reality is that like government is probably not going to provide for you later, and therefore you need to pack that peanut butter and jelly sandwich for 30 years. And that's savings, right? Like that's the whole point of long-term savings. And so I just like, my hope is that it's not just something that is prevalent in the Bitcoin crowd, but really in general, that people are thinking more towards the future, and that, stop prioritizing so much of today, when the reality is that much later you're harder to work and so forth. It's harder to get work. It's harder to maintain work when you're older, or you might have medical conditions or whatever it is that just prohibits you from working when you're later. Like, you need to be planning for these things today. And, best case scenario is you oversaved and you live a glorious retirement, right? Worst case scenario is that you're now a burden on your family, friends, and community.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.